Welcome to Elon Beyond the Bricks, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of Elon University to explore the stories, ideas, and innovations shaping our community. Each episode will talk to individuals who are making a difference in the world and explore the values and experiences that make Elon so special. We hope you'll find stories that inspire and challenge you, and perhaps even spark new ideas of your own. Join us as we dive into conversations that go beyond the classroom and into the lives of our remarkable students, alumni, parents, faculty, and staff. Thanks for joining.
Hello and welcome to Elon Beyond the Bricks. I'm your host here at Elon University, President Connie Book, and today we're talking with Ryan Vett, a 2013 alumnus. Ryan is an entrepreneur, a U.S. Today best-selling author, and an international speaker. He has advised Fortune 500 companies and mentored entrepreneurs on leadership, generational dynamics, and personal branding. Beyond his professional success, Ryan is a devoted husband and father living in Durham, North Carolina, with his wife, Jessica, who is a 2014 Elon alum. And Ryan and Jessica have two sons with a daughter on the way in just a few months. Ryan, I'm excited to have you here today, and welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Dr. Book. I'm excited to be here.
Now, do you remember how we first met, Ryan? Do you have any? You were a student.
I believe I probably had some harebrained idea that I tried to bring to you.
That is exactly right? It. But it actually was a really good idea. And I want you to tell the audience, because they'll all appreciate this, since we're a residential campus and you were working in Res Life. And yes. It was really, I thought, your entrepreneurship in action as a student. So can you tell them a little bit about what you invented and why?
I believe, was that the software?
Yes.
I had a lot of harebrained ideas. So
This was a really good one that helped our residence life team.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as an RA on campus, we had to do so much paperwork, like literal physical paperwork, and it was in triplicate forms, and I just thought there had to be a better way to do it. So I got together with a buddy of mine that was a developer. I can't write a lick of code to save my life, but he could, and we actually developed a startup that actually did well beyond Elon. So I risked all of the money I'd saved for my wife's engagement ring on buying a backdrop, a 10 by 10 backdrop, and getting trade show booth reservation in Vegas for a conference in higher ed. And we ended up selling and maximizing that money there and got a huge ROI. And a bunch of residential campuses actually started using the software.
And if I recall, it was about room inspection, that at the end of the semester, every RA has to go into a room and say, okay, did the students leave it like they found it, or are there additional repairs that are needed?
Exactly. It was a room condition form, and people would, there was just not a lot of integrity in what someone would self-report on a lot of those forms. So we had the ability to help predict damage billing. It was actually early AI back in 2010, when we were working on that, trying to predict what damages would be, cycling mattresses out, things like that.
Really helpful. And I know we still use a lot of that modeling in our analytics about how to take care of the 3,000 different dorm rooms we have on campus, So, but I remember being impressed. Here's this student who's coming up with ideas, actually making them happen. But it wasn't your first foray into a startup. That happened at just 14 years old. Can you tell me a little bit about, your youth, and why is it that you started being a problem solver and thinking about entrepreneurship at such a young age?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a big part of that I owe to my parents. My parents definitely wanted me to solve my own problems, and we grew up in a modest home. Never wanted anything, but also didn't have some of the things that other friends might have had. And I remember really wanting a PlayStation 2. And I had to save up for a PlayStation 2 all on my own if I wanted to have that. And that's how I started the company when I was 14. But before that, it was lemonade stands and I had a guinea pig and a turtle and different pets, and I would try to charge people to have a petting zoo. I would try just about anything and learned a lot over the years before turning it a little bit more serious.
Well, okay, what animals were you charging people to pet?
We had a wiener dog named Penny and a guinea pig. I'm not sure which version of a guinea pig that was at that point, and 2 turtles. And then I roped my neighbors in to bring their animals over. They had a lizard of some sort. So it was a whole circus.
I love that. And where was your hometown?
I grew up in the western suburbs of Chicago.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay, so you met your wife, Jessica, here at Elon. You arrive at Elon. And at the time, we also, as a university, were just starting to think about entrepreneurship, and that providing students with the strong foundation and the skill sets that drive entrepreneurship. So can you tell me a little bit about meeting Jessica and your time at Elon and the courses and how you mapped this all into your professional life?
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that was really interesting about me choosing Elon, I had a deposit on another school, and I was going to go to that school. I was set on it, and someone I knew was like, you just have to step on campus at Elon. And as soon as I did, I fell in love. And one of the things specifically with the business school, when I toured there, it was a small class size, and that the professors and the faculty were just so engaged with the students and had a personal interest in their success. A letter grade was great, but their success as an individual, and that really helped me thrive in my entrepreneurial journey. My first official company that I incorporated when I was 14, I actually closed down to come to Elon, not knowing I could even sell it. And I didn't have a lot of business mentors in my life until that point. And so many of the faculty, when I was there and still had real life experience or were working in corporate jobs and would come as an adjunct and teach. And some of those real life conversations were so powerful to me as a student. So from the academic side of it, while the curriculum was great and I think continues to rise as we're seeing in all these rankings across the country, I think what's really interesting to me is those relationships and how they invested in me and where I was trying to grow as a professional and an individual.
I do love that point about Elon and that you're making because even that story about how I remember meeting you. It's this idea that it's a relationship. It's a two-way interaction, and that our classrooms are open to new ideas. And I have so many times that I've asked a question in class, and this fresh idea from a student's perspective has changed my thinking. And so I love that about the collaboration that we have in the classroom. To your point about artificial intelligence, it's really happening at a rapid pace right now that we are co-learning with students this new innovation and how to maximize it. It's one of the few times I can remember in my learning career that something has launched. It was the fastest adopted technology in world history and is influencing, teaching and learning here as a co-space, that it's a co-space with students because students in many ways have, been digital natives and smartphone natives. So they intuitively understand some of these tools that faculty, different generation. So I appreciated the generational comments in your book and identified with it. I'm going to ask some questions in just a second, but I want the audience to know that you have co-founded several businesses and startups, from a marketing firm, a gig economy platform, to the Oak House Coffee Bar, right, and Wine Bar right here on campus.
Yes.
And you're also an international speaker, bringing good ideas and motivation and an understanding about continuous improvement, which you talk about in your book, in this recent book, and those diverse experiences that really do shape us and drive entrepreneurial and innovative thinking. So when you think about the key experiences in your own life, which ones do you lift up as moments that really influenced your work?
That's a really good question. And I think coming back to something you asked a minute ago, how my wife and I met, it all connects back to res life. She was one of my residents. We did not date, for the record, while she was my resident, but that's how we met. And I would say that actually really changed a lot of my thinking and my priorities throughout work. After we got married and started having kids, trying to understand what was most important and why am I doing what I'm doing. The entrepreneurial ventures and venture-backed startups, raising money, that was fun. And I still love being a part of that world to some extent. But really where I've always had a passion and where my passions have landed since is investing in training, equipping, empowering the next generation of leaders, of founders, of entrepreneurs, of executives. And so I did share a little bit of that in this book, which was supposed to be slapstick, a little bit funny. It was a departure from some of my other writing and from my next book coming out in 2026. And it was met with a lot more publicity and success than I had expected for a book of its nature.
Well, we all can relate, particularly to the AV.
Hmm.
Everybody has been, in a moment where the audiovisual goes down or, causes
Right.
stress in our, there were so many moments in this book that I appreciated the comment about silence, that sometimes your audience, is not as engaged as you would hope or,
Right.
so, let's talk about this book, and tell me why you decided that this book was needed, and that moment when you said, "Okay, I'm going to be the one to write it."
Absolutely. It started as a personal challenge. One of the things in my own speaking was my lack of ability to add humor. That I have sarcasm, but sarcasm is not always humor. And when you're speaking around the world or to different audiences, and my main topics are on generational dynamics, so I'm talking about the things you're not supposed to be talking about at the dinner table or on your first date or in a high stakes setting. And that's what I'm talking about. And so sometimes sarcasm doesn't convey well. And one of my good professional speaking buddies, she challenged me to add humor, and so I started writing in a very comical tone. Again, kind of a departure from some of my more serious, borderline academic writing style. And I just started every single time something ridiculous happened on the road or stories that had happened in the past, I just started writing them out. And before I knew it, I had 40 stories. And I was like, well, this is something. And I had the little gooder guy, the little character drawn kind of as my, just to add humor and levity to tough situations. And all of a sudden I started sharing these stories and people are like, you need to put that in a book. And
Yeah.
that's what I did. And it took off.
Yeah. Okay, so I want you to share a couple of these stories. Now, I'll say, I chuckled out loud about when the crowd goes missing.
Yes.
So, but
Yes.
you pick one. You pick, one or two of these to tell us.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting ones was, a lot of times when you're speaking with associations, they have exhibit halls. It's the sponsors that help bring in speakers, professional speakers. Well, one of these associations, it's a national association, they were trying to get more people on the exhibit floor so sponsors could sell to them. So they had this massive stage in the middle of a glass fishbowl, and I'm standing outside of it, and everyone's getting a set of headphones as they walk in. And I was like, this is new. And I finally get on stage. There is no sound check because it's a speaker series. So we're back to back to back. I get up and I realize that every single person is wearing headphones because the microphone I'm speaking in is going directly to them to cancel out the noise in the room. So that was interesting in and of itself. I'm not sure if they're listening to their music, if they're listening to me. And
Podcast.
then the stage, I don't know what was wrong with the wiring in the stage, but if I moved at all, the screens would start to flash and the sound would start to pop, like if I moved at all. And so this AV guy comes trying to solve the problem, and he's like standing in front of me, moving around me. It's like we were dancing. And so the audience is laughing. I was having a good time with it. But it was a very short keynote. It was like a 30-minute keynote, and I had to get through a lot of material. But we got through it. We had fun as an audience, and the meeting professional thanked me afterwards. She said she's never quite seen anything like that, but we still delivered the message that needed to be delivered.
It is fun. I mean, and to your point about live dynamics, because so many of your stories are about things that happen in these live moments, and being able to embrace it. I remember the snowstorm story that you read. I mean,
Yeah,
things happen, right?
they do. They
Um,
do.
you know, when you think about the dynamics of writing something like this, what I appreciate about uh, the advice you got from a friend, and I always say this, that one of the most important things we do as leaders is to stay coachable, is that we can learn and continuously improve, that coachability. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because, that's a lot of your business is wrapped around this idea of helping CEOs and other folks learn new skill sets and how that helps in their leadership. So can you talk a little bit about coaching and coachability?
Absolutely. One of the challenging things for all of us is it doesn't matter how old we are, and I think the older we get, the more set in our ways we get just naturally. It's the way it's always been done. It's worked. It's tried and true. It becomes a safety net, and I think all of us become more risk adverse the more mature we get into our careers, into our positions, into our seats. And it is usually risk that got these high level executives into the spot in the first place. And so trying to get them back to a place where they go back to their roots. And when I do a lot with the generations, again, you're touching on really sensitive topics. You're talking about race, you're talking about politics, you're talking about sex, and all of these different things. Those are tough conversations to reshape and reform the way someone's been thinking. So I bring them back to their roots. And we go through why do you think the way that you do? How have you evolved over time? And how do we make sure that we are either bringing in the next generation, succession planning, whatever those different aspects are, and really trying to shed light on the broader picture of why they think the way that they do. And when they can start to unwind, it doesn't mean change their thinking, but unwind why they think the way they do, they're usually able to pivot and be a little bit more amenable to change.
I like that because you're right that you can't adopt a defensive posture
Mhm.
when challenged, right, to do things differently. And I'm often talking to business leaders, parents, alumni about this generation of college student, and
Yeah,
in that it's not worse or better, it's different.
it is.
And just like we were different in our generation when we arrived to college. Um, Arthur Brooks was on campus this past fall, and he writes about generational difference and risk taking, to your point, and says that it is that energy of the 30-year-old self and the 50-year-old self, and that we were less risk averse in our 30s and late 20s than we become. And to your point about your own children changing your about how you wanted to live the rest of your life, and I'm connecting a lot of those ideas. So your book really on this book is about improving our speaking skills. So I know we have lots of listeners who that also want to improve their listening skills. In your last chapter, you talk about some things that people, in those closing thoughts. Do you want to share just a couple of key takeaways that you remember as a speaker and bring into those settings that could help the rest of us?
Absolutely. I think, the closing thoughts, I had to get my serious writing out a little bit. I couldn't be all funny. Had to bring a little bit of, you know, uh, just thoughtfulness into it. But a few things from a public speaking perspective, and then from just a human perspective. From the public speaking perspective, we are human beings speaking to other human beings, and I think we forget that. Sometimes we feel like you have to be on a pedestal or you have to have it all together to be behind the podium, and that's not true. And especially as we're looking at Gen Z in particular, trending towards this authenticity, and they want raw and vulnerability from leaders because there's a distrust of leaders. You're seeing very similar trends that Gen X had, and similar traits there. We're seeing this with Gen Z now. I think when you're speaking, when you're presenting, just be raw and be human. That doesn't mean getting overly emotional. I think that's a whole different conversation. But being authentic, knowing who you're speaking for, and just have a main message. If everything goes haywire and your lights are falling down, the floor under you is literally under construction, the floor shaking, there's an earthquake,
Yes.
all of those things in the book, you can read more.
Yeah.
The reality is, if you know where you're going and you just fixate on that finish line and you make sure that you drive that point home, whether you've got 3 hours to do a workshop or you've got 10 minutes to drive home a point, because everything else is shutting down, you've got to press forward and know why you're delivering that message. And if it impacts one person, if you move one person from point A to point B, you've done your job.
Is there I know you do a lot of public speaking and a lot of engagement. When you think about your most successful moments, what were those? Like what was it that made that moment so special and successful?
I think audience feedback when they're involved is always fantastic. It just allows you, it amps you up. And I'm an introvert naturally, which surprises most people. As someone who's not afraid to get on stage, at the end of an event, you're going to find me in a corner. I try to disappear. I love events with backstages because I go and I'll do a quick meet and greet, but then I like to be alone. So I think energy from the crowd is great. It is helpful. And then I think when someone comes up afterwards and shares an insight, I think of two examples. One, I had a big keynote last year, first time I ever delivered it. So it's always a little
Mhm.
shaky and rocky. And I actually we had a tech issue, a major tech issue, and I kind of leaned back on a previous line of, a module or a excerpt from a previous keynote I had given. What stuck was the one-liner, and that one-liner was tweeted. People came up to me afterwards. It was not even written into that. It was something from before, but it just showed the power of that note. So that was one example. And the other one, doing one of these generational talks, sometimes, especially when I'm doing motivational keynotes, sometimes people tear up, they laugh. You want to kind of give them the humor and emotional ride. And this woman, the first row, just is like sobbing. And like, what did I say? This is about generations and leadership. Like, this is not supposed to be emotional. And she came up afterwards and she's like, I've been having, she was in probably her mid 40s. I've been having issues with my mother, she said, and with my daughter. And your talk on generations made it clear. And so those types of things those are worth it all. When you're trying to talk about leadership and you've helped give her clarity and insight into her own family and some of the dynamics that might be at play, that was just really powerful. And that sticks out to me.
I love hearing that. I do think, Ryan, that is very consistent with how you started this conversation about the power of impacting someone's life. And really, there is no better reward. That's it. I feel that in education and the work we do here is, that we really are, when you have a profession where you are investing in other people's success, right? That, helping them in any way you can to reach their full potential, it's very rewarding. And I always say I can't think of a more meaningful life. You can be a nurse, you can be a teacher, a business leader, any profession, that you desire and have that work, right? Like have that sense of purpose. Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, I want to close with, I've always enjoyed, for people, Ryan is like calm. I don't know if they can hear that in your voice, but Ryan is calm. And I've always appreciated your demeanor and your approach with people. But you've had such a dynamic professional life, and I know that brain is swirling all the time with good ideas. So how do you manage to balance your career, your beautiful children, your life with Jessica, and involvement in your faith community? So how are you balancing it all?
Yeah, there are two things that I always say to anyone. One is, what are your priorities? I think that's such a basic question, and someone once challenged me with that. And I went through and I started to throw out, oh, I wanted this much in a bank account or whatever it was, and he was like, no, your priorities. Those are things that don't change. What are those things that are consistent throughout your life and every season of life goals are fine if you want that house, that car, whatever, but what are your priorities? And when I started to think about that and I wrote it down, the reality is since the time I was at Elon till now, they haven't changed. And my life looks very different now than it did in the decade and change since. So I think knowing my priorities is one. The second, and I write about this at the end of Speak Gooder, is the idea of having people in your life and the importance of community. I think there's three people we should all always have in our life. The first one I call forerunner, the person that's run ahead of you, the mentor, the person that can show you where the pothole is before you fall into the pothole. And hopefully you get a couple less sprained ankles along the way, although learning through the School of Hard Knocks is also helpful. And then the second, and probably the most important for me, is running mates. Who are those people that are running alongside of you? And I've got a friend from Elon that I met that I stayed in very close contact with regularly, and he knows what's going on in my life, the good and the bad. And I think that's hard and challenging to share some of that, but can ask the tough questions to make sure that I'm doing okay. When everything might seem okay on the outside, am I actually doing okay? So that's the second tier of person, the running mate. And the third is the person that's a few steps behind you. The people that you can mentor and pour into. And when I write or when I speak, or even when I have the opportunity to occasionally come to campus and teach a class, when I get those questions and I have to think about why did I make that decision, I end up learning so much more in teaching, and it's so much more beneficial for me. It's actually really self-serving because I never thought about that question, or I haven't really thought about why I did that. So those are the two big things: knowing your priorities and then making sure you have the right people in your life on your journey, because leadership is a journey.
So the forerunner, the running mate, and the person running behind me. I love that. Okay, I'm going to remember that. That'll be my tagline from the podcast.
I love it.
Yeah, very nice. Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Ryan, on Beyond the Bricks. I know that these words will inspire others, so thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Book.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Elon Beyond the Bricks. Please subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode, and leave a review to help others discover the conversations that matter. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.